Ladies and gentlemen, what is going on? Welcome back to Force Strategy Gaming. Today we will be taking a look at a Terran strategy. In this particular replay, the player we are focusing on here is Happy, and the opponent is AAA's Inertio. So let's go right into Happy Vision. What we are going to be looking at today is a very heavy Hellion open push. Also, we're going to see some early aggression from Happy in going for a Barracks a little bit faster than what is usual for some early Marine pressure, buying him time for the Hellions. There's a few things in particular in this replay that I wanted to show you guys, but the main focus of this is going to be that heavy Hellion push. We're going to look at how effective it can be, and then we'll talk about the dangers that you could face as well, and what you would do in certain situations. So what we actually saw Happy do in this game is he went 10 depot, 11 racks, 12 refinery. So he held off on that 12th SCV so that he could build that racks a little bit sooner than he built that 12 SCV and got his refinery down. What this does, of course, is it gets that Marine out just a few seconds earlier, and what that will allow you to do is be a little bit aggressive early on with 1 or 2 Marines and an SCV, and this, of course, in turn will force your Zerg opponent to build more Zerglings than maybe he otherwise would, or pull drones off the line and stop mining. Certainly a tactic that can be very effective. So here comes the push, but along with this, I'm just going to pause momentarily and talk about this opening build that we're seeing here from Happy. Alright, so the opening build, as mentioned, was 10 depot, 11 racks, 12 refinery, then also 15 orbital command. Now what's going to happen is as you're pushing out, as soon as you have that first 100 Vespian from your refinery, you'll be building that factory, and that came down at 17 supply. Now after this point, a reactor will be placed on this initial barracks at 18 supply. You can see just moving out with these 2 Marines and 1 SCV, getting that reactor, because as soon as this factory is done, you're going to switch that up and start churning out Hellions, then going out with your expansion, and then once you push with those Hellions, you'll be transitioning into Marine tank. Alright, so let's go ahead and pick it up here. I do, of course, want to look at this early game aggression here from Happy and just look at how effective he can be. So as you can see, Inertio's spawning pool has just popped, and he's building his Zerglings right around now. We're just about a little bit over 4 minutes in game time. At the expansion, almost every Zerg player is going to fast expand in one way or the other. In this game, we actually saw Inertio go with a 15 hatchery into pool. But even if he was going 21 hatch, he'd be hitting just about when it dropped, and you would have Zerglings on the board. Now this is something that's really, really cool. As you can see, what was happening here is as Happy was being chased, he realized he was quite outnumbered. There were 8 Zerglings here, and now it looks like there are only 7, but to prevent and delay rather the surround on these Marines, you saw him drop this bunker. Now he doesn't expect to get his units inside of the bunker, he doesn't expect to finish it, but he just bought those Marines a little bit of extra time, allowing him to kill off 1 or 2 more Zerglings than they would otherwise if they had gotten surrounded by the Zerglings, and then canceling off that bunker. Now heading back to his base, again, that whole point of that Marine pressure was to maybe make him build a couple more Zerglings than he would otherwise, delay mining a little bit, but also buy times for you to start getting out the Hellions. You can see, as soon as the factory finished here, switched with the barracks that had built that reactor, and now we'll start pumping out double Hellions. And what's going to happen here is we're going to see Happy just continuously building Hellions non-stop until he has about 12, and then he'll also be coming out with his expansion, and then pushing into the Zerg opponent's base at around when you have around 12 Hellions. Something else that's really neat that he's doing here is he will be camping right outside of the front base of Inertio with only 4. You wouldn't want to continuously put all 12 Hellions to the front, because then that would tell that Zerg opponent what exactly you're doing. But what this does here, and what we're seeing Happy do, is containing his Zerg opponent and stopping him from getting any scouting information, with the notable exception of there possibly being an Overlord scout. But as you can see, look at that, having Marines on patrol here to deny any possible Overlord scouts as well. So what's happening right now is Happy realizes that he has Inertio completely contained, and Inertio has no idea what's going on. Yes, he does see Hellions, but this type of contain is fairly popular, and this can be followed up by anything. Happy could have very well just gone with 4 Hellions and then moved into, I don't know, Cloak Banshees, or maybe going for some sort of a stim Marine drop. There's all sorts of possibilities, and the denying of vision that these 4 Hellions at the front plus these Marines patrolling on the edge gives you is a really, really big advantage. You can see right now Happy coming down with that expansion. As mentioned, he did drop that at 46, and then at this point he's preparing for his transition into Stim Marines and Siege Tank. We're going to see the Stim Pack research start building Marines. The factory is going to get a tech lab on it, and there'll be another racks built here on this reactor. So here's the moment right now. There are 12 Hellions on the board. Let's take a look here. Yes, there are 12 Hellions on the board. The 4th to front still denying vision. Marines still patrolling the edge of the base to deny any Overlord scouts, and then here comes the push. So time for another pause. We are at 8 minutes in the game. Major questions would be, Force, what about roaches? What about Mutalisk? Those are both possibilities. Mutalisk would be popping out at about this time, but you have to realize if someone went this heavy, this strong for mutas early on, he would only be sitting at about 5 or 6 mutas. Yes, 5 or 6 mutas will kill these Hellions, but it will take them quite a while, and those Hellions will still do a lot of damage. Now, the next question is, Force, what about roaches? Obviously, Hellions are terrible against roaches, and if the Zerg player opened up with roaches, your Hellions would not really want to engage them. In most scenarios. Obviously, if you had no other choice of defense, then that's what you would do. But if you meet roaches on the open field, or if you meet roaches at the Zerg player's base, you just walk away. These Hellions are obviously so much faster than the roaches, you can easily avoid them, especially off creep, and that's what you would do. If the Zerg opponent pushed with roaches, you would want to get a bunker, possibly even 2. Send any Marines that you have, and possibly if you had stopped building Marines, as Happy had, start building Marines, and then get them in the bunker, mass repair, and that will be your best defense against a roach push. And at the same time, if roaches are coming at your base, you can easily counterattack. He's pushing out against you, you can push out against him with the Hellions. So let's push play and move into the attack here. We're going to see Happy push on in. Fortunately for Inertio, he did drone up very, very hard. You can take a look right here. We can see sitting at 50 drones, but watch what is going to happen. These Hellions just absolutely going to destroy everything basically that Inertio has. We can see right now Inertio actually forced to cancel that layer just to try to come out with some roaches to defend against this. But look at how devastating these Hellions are being. Of course, stay away from any spine crawlers. Try to stay away from the queens. Your primary target here is going to be to hit the economy. That is the entire focus of this Hellion push right here, is to destroy the Zerg player's economy. So as I mentioned, Mutalisk, yes, if they were in play right now, they would be killing your Hellions, but you would still be able to do a lot of damage before the Mutas killed the Hellions. And then it's also scouting. You'd see the Mutas, and then you could instantly start building Marines, maybe get up a couple of turrets as well. Now let's take a look at how devastating that was. You can see right now, workers killed. Very, very sad situation right now. 36 drones lost here for Inertio. So the attack was obviously a success. Now, at this point, it's time for the transition. Here is the command center that was being built as those Hellions were pushing out, those 12 Hellions. And the transition is into a popular, effective Terran strategy against a Zerg opponent, and that is, of course, Marine Tank. We can see Stimpack being researched, Combat Shield would start after this. Here come the tanks as well. Concerned about things like a counterattack. After doing something like that amount of damage, the Zerg player likely will try to push out against you, try to catch you off guard, and do a bit of damage. Now, if you see something like this, don't be too concerned, especially given the amount of damage that that Hellion push would hopefully do. If your Hellion push didn't do a lot of damage and you took a lot of losses, it will be a wise decision to come out with some bunkers. That will probably be very necessary against any kind of counter aggression that you would be seeing. So, I mean, right now, obviously, Happy has got a huge advantage. There's really not much to say about it other than that. He did so much damage to Inertio, and it's going to be really hard for Inertio to kind of recover from this. So from this point forward, as mentioned, Marine Tank will be the main focus. You can see right there sprinkling a Marauder or 2 or possibly even 3 into the mix. That is just in case the Zerg player does start to go really roach heavy. You do want to be able to handle that. But you do, of course, overall want to go generally Marine heavy. Marines are very strong against Banelings and Speedlings with proper micro, and they're incredibly strong against any Mutalisk that you may see. Marines are always going to be kind of the main composition when you're going, well, Marine Tank, pretty clearly. There are mech-style builds that you do see every now and then, but overall, Marine Tank is kind of the most popular, most effective build. Doing all sorts of types of harass this game. As you can see right now, Happy moving into some sort of drop harass. Again, the main goal here is to be killing off workers, sniping queens, and killing off tech buildings. Unfortunately, though, Inertio was able to deal with that quite quickly, but just being a nuisance is enough. I mean, as you can see, all Happy lost there was 1 Marine. Really not that big of a deal, so... And then comes the point where you'll be considering an additional attack. And what we're going to see Happy do here is prepare for any possible counter-aggression. What's the biggest threat a Zerg player can present to you if you're pushing out with your army? The biggest threat is a Speedling counterattack. Those can be devastating. So we'll see Happy actually formulate a wall for when he pushes out. And then that's basically it. He's also getting ready to possibly move into this expansion where I think we're going to see him drop it as he moves out for the aggression. That general mentality is, hey, I'm attacking, now's a good time to drop an expansion. So yes, looks like Happy is just about to do that. You can see he's floating those extra resources. But this wall off, realized the primary purpose and the reason he built this was because he's pushing out and he's concerned about a Speedling counterattack. Now, what is your push going to be focused on? Obviously, yes, in general, let's kill our opponent. But the main, really the main focus here is to kill off expansions. You can see right now scanning, seeing that expansion at the high yield. This is going to be his primary target. If he can take that out, he's in a good position. So setting up some tanks there, pushing forward with those Marines. Also, some sort of a spread with your units is a really good idea. Having these Marines at this position allows him to see any pushes of Banelings or Speedlings coming in from that direction and allows him to prepare. Now here's that counterattack that he was concerned about. Let's take a look at how Happy deals with it. Obviously that front wall did get busted, but you can only imagine what would have happened if that front wall wasn't even there. It could have been 10 times worse. So having the front wall, certainly a great idea when you're pushing out with any sort of an attack to protect yourself from that likely counterattack. Just pulling back with his units though, he took out the expansion, that was his goal. Now it's time to return to his base and defend, and then keep it up. There's no reason to stop this aggression, there's no reason to let up, unless you feel like you're vastly outnumbered and he's got just way more than you and he'll overwhelm you in any push. Then just keep up that aggression and continuously try to pressure him and take out expansions. But at the same time, look at that, rebuilding that wall, dealing with these continuous Speedling counterattacks, but he will just be continuously pumping out units, try to keep up that macro non-stop, obviously. And then just try to defend this front wall as much as possible. And you can see, unfortunately, just a moment too late getting that wall up completely, but not a big deal. Bouncing back and forth to try to defend against this, but once he has that wall complete, he's feeling pretty comfortable at that point. We'll be moving down with the bulk of his forces, and here comes that push. Creep tumors, try to take those out as well. Obviously, that helps you quite a bit. Destroying these creep tumors denies that Zerg player the vision that he so desperately wants to try to spot where your units are, and obviously the creep also increases the speed of his units, and that's something you want to try to avoid as well. So as we can see right here, Happy is doing what he can to take out these expansions. Quick pause too, and I do want to just take a quick look. As we can see, Nercio hasn't expanded over here, but it would not hurt to check that. Dropping a scan, sending a Viking, anything is really a possibility. As we can see, Happy, I don't believe he did make any Vikings this game, but you are going to see a lot of Terran players build one Viking, just one Viking, and that is used for Overlord hunting, and that is used for scouting. And it could really be super effective in this particular game. You can see right here, if he had built one Viking, there's a free Overlord, here's a free Overlord, that one's probably a free Overlord, I don't think it would make it all the way in time, there's a free Overlord as well. And then once you've sniped out all of these Overlords, not only have you induced a supply block, you've set them back and forced them to build more Overlords, but then you could use that Viking to scout out and check for these additional bases. Something, again, that would be really effective is if he did happen to expand here, while all of this pressure was going on, all Happy would have to do is grab one medevac, fill it with Marine to drop it, and you could snipe that expansion so very effectively, especially with the bulk of your army being at the front of the Zerg player's base. It will be very difficult for them to contend with two attacks in two different positions at one given time. So picking it back up right here, we will be continuing the game. The game is pretty much just about over. Happy's really been in a phenomenal position right here. One of the ooh, here we go. That's actually a really good thing to take a look at. Backing up just momentarily, I mentioned spreading out your units to try to spot the opposition so you can properly prepare. If this Marine weren't in this position, we would be seeing this attack coming maybe a little bit too late, and that would allow those Roaches and Speedlings to get up on these ever important tanks and very expensive tanks, and possibly not have enough time to respond with the bulk of those Marines and Marauders. But since that Marine was scouting out, spotting the Roaches in time, allowed Happy to pull back with his bio and take out these Roaches, and giving those tanks a little bit of extra time to do damage. And as you can see right here, the Roaches get mopped up, and Nercio just leaves the game. So we did take a look at quite a few things in this game. Hopefully it was informative for you guys. Let me go back to the build order very quickly. Alright, so the opening build that we saw, remember, it was a fast ranks for a little bit earlier aggression. It was 10 depot, 11 racks as opposed to the typical 12 racks, and then 12 refinery. 15 was an orbital command, 17 was a factory, with those first two Marines and an SCV applying a little bit of pressure, trying to stop mining or delay it, even if it's momentarily, and trying to force the creation of more Zerglings than would typically be built. So yes, the factory was at 17 supply, and then while moving out with those two Marines and that SCV, start building a reactor on this barracks here so that as soon as that factory finishes, you can switch it, put it on the reactor that was built on the barracks, and then start building up your Hellions. That first big strong push will be coming around 8 minutes with about 12 Hellions. We saw just how effective it would be. As mentioned prior, I told you how to deal with the situation of Roaches as well as the possibility of Mutas. Realized if he goes fast Mutas, yes, they'll kill your Hellions, but A, there will not be a lot of Mutas, and B, you'll still be able to do quite a bit of damage. While that 12 Hellion push is happening, that is when the command center went down. Start building that, of course, inside of your main base, trying to protect it from any 1 or 2 speedlings could kind of disrupt that by killing off your SCV. So building it in your main base will be a good idea. And then while the push is happening, while you're building your expansion, then you're preparing that transition into the general army of Marine tank. You start your second barracks. You start getting your stim pack. You start building up your tanks as well. Get your starport. Start off with medevacs. Transition into 1 Viking. As I mentioned, that can be very effective. We didn't see Happy do it in this game, but it certainly wouldn't have hurt him if he had built 1 Viking to kill off a few overlords and get some scouting done. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you have enjoyed this video. As always, guys, if you like the content, please subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. Keep watching and keep owning.